Everything to do with the Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot drama is also not helping at all in the least. In fact, it's only making things worse for the Disney image, for the overall Snow White box office results.
Disney doesn't know what a Disney princess is anymore, which is crazy.
What was this Academy Awards? Anyway, feminist Conor McGregor.
Who the fuck is that guy?
It's a weird walk for a weird broad, and I don't like her.
It is, and it's really mean to put her next to Gal Gadot.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad. The primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
Gal Gadot just pulled back the curtain on something nobody ever expected. The behind-the-scenes disaster during Disney's Snow White wasn't simply about budget mismanagement or a poorly executed remake. Oh no, this chaos reportedly spiraled out of control because of one name, Rachel Zegler. From the very first days of filming, these two women were allegedly at each other's throats. One was determined to preserve an atmosphere of professionalism.
Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad. And so I've got some bona fides here on being fair. The movie was absolutely terrible. Every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse. The movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism. It wasn't through a filter of Japanese anime, it was through a filter of liberalism. So from the casting to the class politics, the politics, the regime politics, everything about it was liberal. Snow White is generally understood to be a very, very white person. And in this case, they decided, nope, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think we're allowed to say that, right? I was referring to the movie as sand beige.
The other was said to be outspoken, defiant, and as some claim, disruptive. And if anyone thought these tensions were just background noise, they're about to be shocked. The fiasco on set supposedly sent ripples all the way into the film's disastrous box office performance. Millions of dollars vanished in a blink, and fans have been left stunned. All signs are pointing to a single culprit, Rachel Zegler, the rising star who found herself embroiled in controversy after controversy.
It's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks? If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
It is not racist to suggest that a character who is described in the original as skin white as snow, that is literally how the character is described in the original, that's a character description in the same way that, as you mentioned, in Moana, this bizarre fixation with race shifting everything, but only in one direction by Disney, obviously is quite strange to the politics of it, because obviously this was a big thing for Rachel Zegler, the star of the film. It was a big thing for all the left-wingers who made the movie.
Culminating in one of Disney's biggest failures to date. And Gal Gadot, she's allegedly spilling all the details of what really happened. But that's just scratching the surface. We're not talking about petty feuds over trailers or backstage gossip about who got top billing. This is deeper. This is about unstoppable personalities colliding, strong opinions on global conflicts erupting into a scorched earth showdown.
There's things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood.
They replace the prince with a common criminal. So there is a prince-like figure, but he's no longer a prince, he's a criminal. And I think this plays first into the class politics of the left, which hates even the very idea of aristocracy or nobility. He's right, they clearly want to diminish the love story. I think after the backlash from those comments a year and a half ago, whenever they were, they did beef up the love story a little bit, but nevertheless, he plays an ancillary role. And you see this in the fuller scope of this politics.
And a star so determined to push her beliefs that she lost sight of the legendary Disney tradition she was hired to uphold. Some say it's the biggest meltdown in Hollywood this year, and the dust hasn't even settled yet. Let's dive into the madness. It all began the moment Rachel Zegler showed up on set, brimming with confidence from her previous triumph in West Side Story. Crew members whispered that she came across as an untouchable rising star, unafraid to voice her critiques of anything and everything. Gal Gadot, famous worldwide for her portrayal of Wonder Woman, stepped onto that same set with her own shining reputation. Right away, the friction was real. No gentle introductions, no sincere attempts at small talk. According to a few bold insiders, Rachel raised eyebrows the instant she declared that the original Snow White was irrelevant in today's world. She insisted the story needed to be overhauled, and, rumor has it, even questioned the creative choices behind the evil queen's depiction. Gal, who had signed on to play that very role, felt undermined from day one. She had prepared tirelessly to embody the iconic villain, hoping to put a modern spin on an old-school classic. But apparently, Rachel thought the entire concept was cringy. She wanted to toss out the Disney charm in favor of something else, something unrecognizable to loyal fans. And what's more intense is how these whispers hint at immediate tension over publicity decisions. People say Rachel marched in, determined, to pivot the conversation to her personal convictions, overshadowing the typical Disney push for a magical, all-ages fairy tale. Sure, it was only the earliest stage of production, but the conflict was lit. The kind of conflict that burns brighter with every day. Still, that was only the beginning, because next came the actual filming, and things took a turn that no one anticipated. Rachel Zegler didn't stop at trashing the original Snow White. She had opinions about every hot-button issue on the planet, and she let the world know. From her very public stance on global conflicts, particularly her pro-Palestinian tweets to her remarks about modern feminism, she embodied the word outspoken. If a topic was trending, Rachel jumped on it with both feet. Gal Gadot, on the flip side, tried to keep her personal politics quiet, at least on the set. That didn't stop people from talking. Rumors swirled that Gal's Israeli heritage and her own political beliefs clashed head-on with Rachel's repeated declarations online. Filming days became more charged by the minute. Some background staff members say the room would go icy whenever the two actresses had to interact. Others recall fleeting moments when Rachel appeared to dismiss Gal's concerns or wave her off. The tension skyrocketed when a series of old social media posts from both women were dragged into the public sphere by fans. Rachel's critics seized on her tweets, calling them inflammatory. Gal's defenders painted Rachel as naive and disrespectful. It was like a ping-pong match of accusations. Instead of focusing on the fantasy world Disney was trying to create, the press and public fixated on this ideological war behind the curtain, and it just kept escalating, day by day. But trust me, social media outrage was only the tip of the iceberg. On set, the tension got real enough to ignite a meltdown no one would forget. Production insiders described filming as a series of constant storms. One day, Rachel took issue with how the evil queen's lines portrayed certain classic fairy tale tropes. She claimed it perpetuated old stereotypes. Another day, she openly criticized Gal's approach to the role, saying it was too mild, too standard, too aligned with Disney tradition. Gal, who had worked hard to perfect that menacing but captivating presence, was incensed. She felt undermined. She wanted to bring a new edge to the role, but apparently not the kind of edge Rachel was demanding. Crew members allegedly noticed distinct cliques forming. Some staff sided with Gal, praising her professionalism and calm under pressure. Others rallied around Rachel, championing her commitment to modernize the story and break away from Disney's archaic formulas. Tempers flared at the slightest provocation, a costume change that took too long, a stunt that didn't go right, a script revision that came out of nowhere. Everything was magnified by the swirling tension between these two actresses. People behind the scenes started bracing themselves for an explosion with every passing day. And eventually, that explosion came. But that still wasn't the end. As filming wrapped up, fans expected a glitzy promotional tour filled with shared interviews and friendly banter. Instead, they got radio silence and overshadowed PR events. When it came time to promote Snow White, fans noticed something jarringly obvious. Gal and Rachel practically never appeared together in interviews or red carpet events. It felt odd. You'd think the film's lead actress playing Snow White and the iconic evil queen would team up to hype fans for the big release. But no. Instead, short interviews here, a scattered social media post there, and minimal direct interaction. It didn't take long for the tabloids to run wild. Headline after headline pointed to a savage falling out. Sure, official representatives tried to spin it. They insisted that scheduling conflicts or personal commitments prevented combined appearances. But the public wasn't buying it. Then, Rachel doubled down on her controversial comments about the original Disney film being outdated. She refused to backtrack. "I stand by what I said," she declared at one press junket. Disney's PR managers practically lost it, realizing that these statements were fueling fan fury. Gal reportedly watched in dismay. She saw how the negative press overshadowed any excitement around the flick. She supposedly wanted to keep her distance from the drama, but it had already spilled into every media outlet. Any chance of a successful promotional campaign quickly dissolved into constant uproar about Rachel's remarks. Memes flooded Twitter, calling the movie snow woke and accusing the cast of tarnishing a treasured classic. That might sound funny to some, but from a business standpoint, it spelled absolute doom. If you think these setbacks were bad, hold on. The actual release turned out to be a full-blown catastrophe. After months of speculation and drama, Snow White finally hit theaters. Disney had sunk a jaw-dropping budget, rumored to be around $250 million into this production. Executives banked on brand recognition to pull in massive crowds. The gamble failed, spectacularly. In its opening weekend, the film grossed a fraction of what analysts had predicted. By the end of its run, Snow White had barely scraped together $168.6 million worldwide, leaving Disney with a painfully obvious flop. All those visual effects, expensive star salaries, and marketing campaigns went up in smoke. Fans cited everything from poor casting choices to controversies swirling around the lead actress. But the harsh truth was that much of the blame landed at Rachel Zegler's feet. People hopped online, labeling this fiasco the fall of Disney's golden touch. They argued that if you alienate the audience, and especially the long-time loyalists who grew up adoring the original Snow White, then you doom the project from the start. Rachel's repeated shots at the 1937 classic and her flamboyant public presence turned countless potential viewers away. Reports floated around that several Disney insiders pointed fingers straight at her. They claimed her loud, in-your-face style overshadowed the movie itself. Gal Gadot, however, apparently tried to salvage the project. She poured her energy into last-minute PR appearances, but the damage was done. By this time, everyone was more focused on the controversies, not the film's content. And when that final box office tally arrived, it became crystal clear. The blame game was only starting. The ripple effects of Snow White's disastrous performance sent shockwaves straight to Disney's upper echelons. Executives panicked. They began slashing budgets, reevaluating the entire strategy of remaking classics. Multiple sources whispered that the planned live-action adaptation of Tangled was suddenly put on ice, a direct reaction to the meltdown they just witnessed. Anger ran high. Corporate voices seethed that the fiasco might have been avoided if the lead actress had stuck to a more classic approach, if she hadn't made bold statements that alienated old-school fans. At the same time, some staff rose to Rachel's defense, claiming that the movie's downfall was also the result of poor story structure and misguided marketing. Nonetheless, a surprising number of key decision-makers seemed convinced that Rachel's combative style was the final nail in this cinematic coffin. Gal Gadot's position with Disney grew shaky too. Even though she was widely admired and revered by fans, her willingness to speak out about her negative experience with Rachel behind closed doors, as rumored, may have rubbed certain executives the wrong way. Some might argue that her revelations, though possibly justified, contributed to the internal meltdown. Others say Disney brass regretted not stepping in earlier to resolve the friction between these stars. But that wasn't the whole story, because next came the fan revolts, the social media wars, and the spotlight shining directly on Rachel herself. In the days and weeks that followed the release, Rachel Zegler found herself pounded by outrage on every online platform you can name. People hurled insults, demanding an explanation for why she consistently tore down the original film and preached divisive opinions. She tried responding, calling out haters for attacking her beliefs. That only sparked more rage. A segment of her fanbase remained staunchly loyal, celebrating her as a voice for modern perspectives. They argued that the failure of Snow White had more to do with Disney's over-reliance on nostalgic retreads. Yet others insisted that Rachel's relentless critiques had turned a massive chunk of the audience against the film before it even hit theaters. Gal Gadot watched from her corner, measured and calm. She never publicly trashed Rachel in interviews. She never went on a rant. Instead, according to Inside Scoops, she let slip bits and pieces of the behind-the-scenes chaos. These tiny morsels of drama were enough to paint a dark picture of her co-star's behavior. As tabloids picked up on these leaked details, Rachel looked worse and worse. She was portrayed as an uncontrollable energy that disrupted everything from the creative process to fan relations. But the scandal skyrocketed to an even higher level when Gal finally bared it all in rumored private conversations. From day one, Rachel had apparently gone out of her way to criticize not just the old Snow White, but everything Disney stood for. She had hammered Gal's portrayal of the evil queen, hammered the script, hammered the entire Disney brand. Some say the negativity spread through the set like a virus, and what happened next would shock everyone. Word on the street is that Gal Gadot, after witnessing the box office explosion firsthand, quietly revealed a slew of stories about Rachel's conduct. She shared how she was trying to focus on nailing the evil queen's twisted aura, only to be cut down by Rachel's never-ending critiques and complaints. She exposed how production meeting after production meeting was derailed by Rachel's tirades about representation, modern values, or outmoded traditions. Some accounts even claim Gal singled out specific moments where Rachel tore apart dialogue she felt was too nice for the evil queen, or too shallow for Snow White. While progressive ideas aren't inherently bad, it was Rachel's delivery, reportedly delivered with an attitude that no one else's viewpoint mattered, that set everyone on edge. Fans who once adored Rachel's performance in West Side Story found themselves caught between admiration for her talent and shock at these new revelations. Tabloids feasted on every rumor, framing Rachel as the unstoppable tornado that toppled one of Disney's priciest ventures. Meanwhile, Gal's version of events catapulted the feud into mainstream headlines. Did she intend to sabotage Rachel, or was she just telling the truth? That question lit up Twitter and YouTube comment sections everywhere. However, one thing stands out. People now see Rachel as the face of Snow White's downfall. So many voices blame her for the souring audience sentiment and the negative press. When it's all said and done, the flick's box office meltdown felt less like a random flop and more like a slow-motion train wreck orchestrated by one headstrong star. In Hollywood, people always move on to the next big thing. But this fiasco lingers like a dark cloud, forcing executives to reconsider every aspect of the remake formula. Will Rachel's reputation bounce back, or is this controversy so massive that it'll mark her forever? Can Gal truly distance herself from this meltdown, or will the rift follow her into future Disney deals? Each question lingers, demanding answers that nobody seems ready to offer. One thing is guaranteed, though. Snow White will be remembered less for the fantastical world of dwarfs and poison apples, and more for the off-screen battles that devoured a giant chunk of Disney's wallet and our collective sense of wonder. Whether you side with Gal's revelations or defend Rachel's conviction, this tale is a stark reminder that even in the land of fairy tales, real-life clashes can turn a hopeful fantasy into a harrowing nightmare. And if that's not a lesson about mixing personal beliefs with professional obligations, then nothing is.